In the past, people close to R. Kelly have described him as dangerous, even monstrous.
And people have no idea that this man just beat me on the bus.
When my daughter came home, she was 98 pounds. When she left to be with him, she was 125.
I love my brother, you know, but he do have a problem.
I know the type of monster he is.
Now he's shared a disturbing video from prison and what he says has reopened painful scars and shaken his victims to their core. In this video, I'll break down the clip and his current situation. Kelly's most disturbing recordings yet. R. Kelly, the cat who used to be known as the king of R&B, is currently doing a 31-year bid at Federal Correctional Institution Butner Medium 1 in North Carolina for some serious charges including racketeering, trafficking, child mistreatment, and production of child material. But here's where things get real twisted, and this is where we need to talk about how we got to this point. Because before these chilling prison recordings, there were moments that should have warned us about what Kelly was really capable of. Remember that explosive 2019 interview with Gayle King? That joint was straight unhinged, and looking back now, it was like watching a preview of the mental breakdown we're seeing in these prison recordings. In that CBS interview, Kelly was already showing signs of the psychological instability that's now bleeding through in every phone call from his cell.
Oh my God, all of them. Got little girls trapped in the basement, helicopters over my house, trying to rescue someone that doesn't need rescuing because they're not in my house, handcuffing people, starving people. I have a harem, what you call it, a cult. I don't even really know what a cult is, but I know I don't have one.
Even then, Kelly's desperation was obvious, and he was cracking under pressure with the same paranoia we hear in his prison recordings. But it escalated when Gayle King pressed him on the allegations.
Everybody?
If you really look at that documentary, which I'm sure you have,
I have.
Everybody said something bad about me. Nobody said nothing good. They was describing Lucifer. I'm not Lucifer. I'm a man. I make mistakes, but I'm not a devil. And by no means am I a monster.
But when King started naming names of his accusers, Kelly completely lost it.
They are lying on me.
The most telling moment came when King challenged him about the consistent stories from multiple women. Kelly's response revealed the same manipulative mindset that we're seeing play out in his current prison strategy.
That defies logic to me.
Right. Until you hear the explanation. You can start a rumor on a guy like me or a celebrity just like that. All you have to do is push a button on your phone and say, so-and-so did this to me. R. Kelly did this to me.
But the most chilling moment was when Kelly completely broke down, giving us a preview of the psychological state we're seeing in his prison recordings.
This is not me, y'all. I'm fighting for my life. Y'all killing me with this. I gave y'all 30 years of my career.
Robert.
30 years of my career. Y'all trying to kill me. You killing me, man. This is not about music. I'm trying to have a relationship with my kids, and I can't do it. Y'all just don't want to believe the truth.
That breakdown was prophetic because that same fighting for my life energy is exactly what we're hearing in these 2025 prison recordings. When Kelly told Gayle King, "I'm fighting for my life," he wasn't just talking about his legal troubles. He was foreshadowing the genuine terror we're hearing in his voice today. Even more telling was when Kelly said,
I have been assassinated. I have been buried alive, but I'm alive.
That buried alive line hits way harder now because in his new tracks, he's talking about folks trying to poison him and take him out in prison. Feels like he was already peeping the vibes and mentally getting strapped for the isolation and paranoia he's living through. And when Gayle pressed him on holding people against their will, he hit her with,
How stupid would it be for R. Kelly, with all I've been through in my way past, to hold somebody, let alone 4, 5, 6, 50, you said. How stupid would I be to do that?
I didn't say you were holding.
That's stupid, guys.
I didn't.
Is this camera on me?
"That is this camera on me?" Moment was wild because it showed Kelly knew exactly how to put on a show. Same type of calculated moves we're seeing now in those prison tapes that feel built to pull sympathy and maybe even sway his case. Now fast forward to 2025, and we're seeing that same manipulation tactic, but amplified by the desperation of someone who knows they're never getting out. Throughout 2025, there's been this pattern of Kelly allegedly recording music or dropping messages through prison phone calls and these joints are getting edited and released online. But these aren't your typical prison freestyles that cats usually drop to keep their street cred up. These recordings are being described as chilling because they're all about death, poison, and this man basically thinking everybody's trying to body him. The whole thing really started popping off in March 2025 when Kelly jumped on a viral social media challenge by remixing Chris Brown's Residuals over a prison phone call. Now, usually when rappers and singers hop on challenges, it's all about flexing and showing they still got it. But Kelly's version hit different, and not in a good way. What's particularly wild is hearing Kelly's voice in these prison recordings compared to how he sounded in that Gayle King interview. In the CBS interview, you could hear the desperation building. In a separate HuffPost live interview that didn't go well, Kelly showed the same pattern of deflection and anger that we're seeing amplified in his prison content.
Yeah,
Another thing, thank you.
If the next question is something negative out of your mouth, with all due respect, that's exactly what I'm gonna do.
When the interviewer tried to ask him about his lyrics, Kelly immediately got defensive.
I would have to say this. I did not come here to get interrogated. I didn't come here for a deposition. You know what a deposition is?
The pattern was always there. Kelly couldn't handle being challenged or questioned, and he'd lash out or try to control the narrative. This is the same energy we're hearing in these prison recordings, except now it's filtered through genuine fear and isolation.
This is a deposition. This is not about R. Kelly. This is not about music. This is not about someone who works hard on his music, who has an album out. This is about trying to interrogate me, and this is about, disrespect.
Now in prison, that same victim mentality has evolved into something much darker. The audio made the rounds on TikTok and Instagram, with Kelly spitting lines like, "Who's getting all my checks?" about his lost royalties. But it wasn't just the words. It was that raw jail phone vibe in his voice that had folks torn. Some called it heartbreaking. Others said it was chilling, because you could straight up hear the fear and pain bleeding through every word. But that was just the beginning of what would turn into one of the most disturbing series of releases to ever come out of the pen. By May 2025, a YouTube track titled "They Trying to Poison Me in Jail" surfaced, and this joint was straight haunting. It was pitched as a vulnerable ballad where Kelly claims prison officials are trying to poison him. As the months went by, these recordings started getting darker and more desperate. By June 2025, multiple tracks dropped with titles that would make your blood run cold. "They're dosing me to death," "I'm not safe in prison," and "I heard the guards say kill him." These weren't just songs anymore. They were like desperate SOS calls from a man who thought he was about to get murked. Kelly was singing about fears of being killed in jail with lyrics that included phrases like, "I can smell death." From the 2019 interviews to these 2025 prison recordings, you can see the full slide into psychological collapse. Back with Gayle King, Kelly was talking about being buried alive and fighting for his life. Now in federal lockup, those lines feel literal. The guy who once ran stages and lived large is down to shaky phone calls from a cell, convinced everyone's out to kill him. What makes these recordings particularly disturbing isn't just the content, it's what they reveal about Kelly's mental state. The themes are consistently dark: death, poisoning, and genuine fear for his life. Whether these fears are legitimate or the result of a deteriorating mental condition is a serious question that has major implications for how we think about prison reform and the treatment of high-profile inmates. The timing was suspect too. These releases coincided with his legal team filing court documents on June 10th, requesting early release and alleging there was a legitimate murder plot by prison officials. It's the same pattern we saw in those pre-trial interviews, Kelly using media and public sympathy to try to influence his legal situation. Now here's where things get really wild. Federal prisons don't play when it comes to recording devices. That stuff is strictly forbidden. So these videos are really just jail phone audios, and then folks on the outside dress them up with AI visuals or stock prison clips. It's basically an underground pipeline built to get Kelly's voice back on the streets. The question everybody's asking is, are these recordings real or fake? At least one widely shared music video from prison was completely AI generated, but some of these recordings are definitely the real deal. In what appears to be an authentic phone call from March 2025, Kelly called into a podcast called Inmate Tea with AANP. The recording has that unmistakable prison phone line quality as he performs his 1998 hit, When a Woman's Fed Up. Hearing this is eerie, fam.
Standing here looking in the mirror, saying damn to myself, I should have known the day would come, she would find somebody else. And all the things I took her through, I shouldn't have lasted this long. Now I'm at this telephone booth, literally calling Tyrone.
The raw emotion's there, but the context makes it hit harder. A man who once sold out arenas now singing through a prison phone for a small podcast crowd. Compare that vulnerable voice to the defiant Kelly in those pre-trial interviews. In the HuffPost sit-down, when he walked off, he was still trying to keep control and dignity.
I'm in New York, I'm having a great time. I'm finna go visit some friends, I'm finna do some more business. I'm finna have a great time. I didn't come here for you to spoil that.
That Kelly is gone. The man calling into podcasts from federal prison is broken, isolated, and genuinely terrified. The bravado has been replaced by raw fear, and you can hear it in every recording. As 2025 progressed, the recordings became increasingly desperate and dark. The most recent drop, uploaded in August 2025, was a track called It's August and Still in Prison, again produced by Lil R3 Vi. This ballad was all about lamenting his ongoing incarceration, serving as a stark reminder that despite all the legal appeals and emergency motions, Kelly remains locked up with little to no hope of getting out early. Looking back at those 2019 interviews now, they feel like a preview of what was coming. When Kelly told Gayle King he felt buried alive, he was essentially predicting his own future. When he broke down crying about fighting for his life, he was foreshadowing the genuine life or death struggle he believes he's facing now in federal prison. Life in the federal system. Now let's get real about what life is actually like for R. Kelly behind those federal prison walls, because understanding his day-to-day reality is crucial to comprehending why these recordings are so disturbing. The transformation from global superstar to federal inmate is probably one of the most dramatic falls from grace in hip-hop and R&B history, and nowhere is this more evident than in the harsh reality of Kelly's daily existence at Federal Correctional Institution, Butner Medium 1 FCI. Butner Medium 1, where Kelly has been housed since April 2023, is a medium-security federal prison in North Carolina that includes medical facilities and previously held high-profile inmates like Bernie Madoff. For Kelly, who got transferred there after doing time in Chicago's Metropolitan Correctional Center and other facilities, this joint is likely going to be his home for the next several decades. Federal prison records show a projected release date of December 21st, 2045, assuming good behavior, meaning Kelly would be 78 years old if he serves his full bid. Now let's talk about what daily life looks like for someone like Kelly in the feds. The routine is governed by restrictions that would be unimaginable to most people, but they're particularly harsh for someone who once lived without any limitations whatsoever. As a convicted sex offender, Kelly is likely in protective custody to avoid threats from general population inmates. This means spending 22 to 23 hours per day in a cell with severely limited human contact, restricted recreation that often consists of just 1 hour daily, sometimes alone, and no access to general population activities like church services, education programs, or most recreational facilities. Recent filings indicate Kelly has been placed in solitary confinement at times for his safety, which represents an even more extreme form of isolation. In the whole, the already limited privileges of protective custody get further restricted, creating what prison experts describe as a form of psychological torture that can seriously mess with someone's mental health over time. The fact that Kelly keeps getting moved in and out of solitary suggests that the threats against him aren't just paranoid delusions. They're legitimate security concerns that prison officials are taking seriously. The psychological impact of this level of isolation is no joke, especially for someone whose entire career was built on feeding off crowd energy and human connection. For a cat who used to command audiences of thousands and live for that adrenaline rush of performance, the silence of a solitary cell represents a complete reversal of everything that once defined his existence. Prison medical care is provided, but his legal team has alleged inadequate treatment, including references to an incurable disease mentioned in a 2025 update. Those specifics remain confidential due to medical privacy laws. What makes Kelly's situation particularly dangerous is his position in the prison hierarchy. Convicted sex offenders, especially those whose crimes involve children, face some of the harshest conditions in the U.S. prison system due to inmate hierarchies and the street code. In prison slang, they're typically labeled as comos, child, molesters, or skinners, and they occupy the absolute lowest rung of the prison social order, below even murderers or major drug dealers. Sex offenders with child victims are universally despised in prison culture, seen as the lowest of the low. This leads to targeted violence, extortion, and social ostracism, rooted in an unwritten code where harming children is considered unforgivable, even among the most hardened criminals. High-profile cases like Jeffrey Dahmer, who got murdered in prison in 1994, or Jared Fogle, who was attacked in 2016, show the very real dangers that cats like Kelly face every single day. The constant threat of violence has clearly taken a toll on Kelly's mental state, which is evident in the increasingly paranoid and fearful tone of his recordings throughout 2025. Kelly's attorneys have repeatedly cited threats to his life, including alleged plots involving white supremacist gangs like the Aryan Brotherhood and corrupt prison staff. The mechanics of how Kelly manages to record and release music from prison provide insight into both his resourcefulness and the severe limitations of his current situation. From prison, Kelly has reportedly written songs, claiming to have written 25 albums in his first 3 years in prison. The reality is that federal prisoners have extremely limited access to recording equipment, making monitored phone calls the primary method for any musical output. These phone calls are heavily monitored and recorded by prison officials, meaning that every word Kelly speaks is potentially being scrutinized and could be used against him in future legal proceedings. The irony is heavy. A cat who once had unlimited access to state-of-the-art recording studios now has to rely on the same monitored phone system that inmates use to holler at their families and lawyers. Kelly has expressed fears in songs like "I Heard the Guards Say Kill Him" from June 2025, which suggests that even prison staff might pose a threat to his safety. The financial aspect of Kelly's incarceration adds another layer of stress to his already overwhelming situation. His music royalties are being garnished for debts and restitution to victims, meaning that even the passive income from his decades-long career is no longer available to him. This financial pressure, combined with the costs of legal representation and basic prison commissary purchases, creates additional stress in an already overwhelming situation. Photos from February 2025 show Kelly in standard prison attire, appearing aged but composed. But these still images don't capture the psychological toll that constant fear and isolation have taken on someone who was once among the most confident and commanding performers in music history. In June 2025, Kelly was reportedly placed in solitary confinement and administered excessive medication by staff, leading to an overdose that required hospitalization in Durham, North Carolina for several days. His legal team characterized this as a deliberate attempt on his life, filing court documents to support claims of a murder plot involving both inmates and corrupt staff members. The incident began on June 13th when Kelly collapsed and was hospitalized, with his attorneys alleging that hospital staff recommended further care that was denied upon his return to prison. Whether this represents genuine medical malpractice, an assassination attempt, or the unfortunate result of Kelly's deteriorating mental health creating conflicts with prison staff. Kelly's team has framed these events as evidence of systemic bias and endangerment, while prosecutors and prison officials have remained largely silent, citing ongoing litigation. This silence from official sources only adds to the atmosphere of uncertainty and fear that seems to define Kelly's current existence. The isolation extends far beyond just physical separation from other inmates. Kelly's family, including ex-wife Drea Kelly and their children, have stated they do not visit him, meaning that his primary human contact comes from attorneys, prison staff, and the occasional monitored phone call. The few privileges that Kelly does have access to, such as a tablet for communication and entertainment, come with significant delays and restrictions. Every interaction is monitored, every communication is recorded, and every movement is controlled by others. For someone who once commanded every aspect of his environment and had people catering to his every need, this complete loss of autonomy represents a fundamental shift in his relationship with the world around him. The streets to the courtroom. All right, let's break down the real story of how Robert Sylvester Kelly went from being the self-proclaimed king of R&B to becoming federal inmate #90,888. This ain't just about one man's fall from grace. This is about how the justice system finally caught up with someone who thought he was untouchable, and how decades of alleged predatory behavior finally got him hemmed up in the most comprehensive legal takedown in hip-hop and R&B history. R. Kelly's legal troubles have roots that stretch all the way back to the 1990s, starting with allegations of misconduct that would haunt him throughout his entire career. The first major red flag came in 1994 when Kelly, who was 27 at the time, illegally married 15-year-old singer Aaliyah using falsified documents. The marriage got annulled quickly in 1995, but this established a pattern of inappropriate relationships with minors that would define the allegations against him for the next 3 decades. In 1996, Tiffany Hawkins sued Kelly, alleging intimate relations that began in 1991 when she was just 15 and he was 24. The lawsuit included some seriously disturbing allegations of coercion into group adult activities with other minors, painting a picture of exploitation that went way beyond a single inappropriate relationship. The case eventually got settled for $250,000 in 1998, but the pattern of using money to silence accusers was now firmly established. This would become Kelly's go-to move for years to come. In 2002, a video allegedly showing Kelly urinating on and having intimate relationship with a 14-year-old girl surfaced, leading to child content charges in Chicago. The tape was clear enough that it led to serious criminal charges, yet Kelly somehow got acquitted in 2008 after a trial where the victim chose not to testify. This acquittal wasn't because there wasn't enough evidence. Multiple witnesses testified that they recognized both Kelly and the minor in the video. Instead, it highlighted how the criminal justice system struggled to prosecute cases involving victims who were reluctant to come forward, often because of intimidation, shame, or financial pressure. The 2008 acquittal would later prove to be just a temporary reprieve rather than vindication, as the same video would become central evidence in his eventual 2022 Chicago conviction. What makes Kelly's case particularly complex is how it evolved from individual criminal charges to a comprehensive federal racketeering case that painted him as the head of a criminal enterprise. The transformation came largely due to the #MeToo movement and the 2019 docuseries, Surviving R. Kelly, which gave voice to over 20 women. The documentary didn't just present individual allegations. It revealed a systematic pattern of behavior that included grooming, imprisonment, and psychological manipulation of young women and girls. The documentary was a game changer because it put faces and voices to the allegations in a way that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. These weren't just anonymous accusers or legal documents. These were real women telling their stories in detail, and the consistency of their accounts painted a picture of a sophisticated operation designed to identify, groom, and exploit vulnerable young women. The federal investigations that followed were led by the FBI and Homeland Security, treating Kelly not as a celebrity who had made some mistakes, but as the head of a criminal organization. This approach fundamentally changed the game, allowing prosecutors to present evidence of a decades-long pattern of behavior rather than treating each incident as isolated. Kelly got arrested in February 2019 on 10 counts of aggravated criminal abuse in Illinois, followed by federal charges in July 2019 in New York for racketeering and trafficking, and additional federal charges in Chicago for child content and obstruction. The New York federal trial, which kicked off in August 2021, lasted 6 weeks and presented a comprehensive picture of Kelly's alleged criminal enterprise. Prosecutors portrayed him as running a criminal enterprise under federal RICO charges to recruit and mistreat women and girls, with over 45 witnesses testifying, including 11 accusers. The testimony was absolutely devastating in its scope and detail, describing Kelly's rules that included calling him daddy.
I text him, "Daddy, I need to use the restroom." No
Daddy.
response. Yes, we were required to call him Daddy.
He also had other weird requirements.
I know you say he became extremely controlling.
Yes.
How so?
I had to wear sweatpants. I had to stand up when he would walk in a room. He would put a lot of his girlfriends on his phone plan so he can control like who you're talking to, how often you talk to your family, what you're texting, things like that.
Evidence presented to support these claims included videos, contracts, and non-disclosure agreements, with a former employee testifying to bribing officials to facilitate the illegal marriage to Aaliyah. This wasn't just about individual acts of mistreatment. It was about a sophisticated operation designed to identify, isolate, and exploit vulnerable young women and girls. On September 27, 2021, Kelly was convicted on all 9 counts, 1 racketeering charge and 8 Mann Act violations for transporting women across state lines for adult work. The conviction represented a watershed moment, not just for Kelly, but for the criminal justice system's ability to prosecute powerful figures who had previously seemed untouchable. But the feds weren't done with him yet. The Chicago federal trial in 2022 focused on the charges that had seemingly been resolved by his 2008 acquittal. The second trial started in August 2022 and centered on child content and obstruction charges from the 2002 video and related acts. This time around, Jane, the girl in the 2002 video, testified and identified herself as a victim, providing the testimony that had been missing from the 2008 trial. Evidence showed Kelly and his associates recovering incriminating tapes and intimidating witnesses as part of a broader pattern of obstruction. On September 14, 2022, Kelly was convicted on 6 of 13 counts. 3 for child content production, and 3 for enticement of minors, while he was acquitted on 7 counts, including conspiracy to obstruct justice, the convictions were sufficient to add decades to his sentence. On June 29, 2022, Judge Ann Donnelly sentenced Kelly to 30 years for the New York convictions, citing his decades of harm and complete lack of remorse. The judge noted that Kelly had shown absolutely no accountability for his actions and continued to present a danger to society. On February 23, 2023, Judge Harry Leinenweber imposed an additional 20 years for the Chicago convictions, with 19 years running concurrently with the New York sentence, effectively adding 1 year to Kelly's total sentence.
This is a significant outcome for all victims of R. Kelly, and especially for the survivors who so bravely testified.
Along with lifetime supervised release, substantial fines, and restitution to victims, the sentence ensured that Kelly would likely spend the rest of his life in federal custody. The appeals process has been swift and decisive in upholding the convictions. In June 2023, the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the New York conviction, and in April 2024, the Seventh U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals rejected Chicago appeal arguments regarding statutes of limitations. Kelly's petition to the U.S. Supreme Court was denied in July 2025, effectively exhausting his legal appeals and closing the door on any hope of overturning his convictions. What makes Kelly's legal downfall particularly significant is how it has influenced broader changes in how the justice system approaches celebrity crimes. The case has highlighted a surge in federal prosecutions using RICO and trafficking laws against celebrities, influenced by the #MeToo movement and documentaries like Surviving R. Kelly. The success of the Kelly prosecutions has emboldened prosecutors to pursue similar cases against other high-profile figures, fundamentally changing the landscape of celebrity accountability. The message is clear: fame and money can't protect you from justice forever. The financial impact has been equally devastating, with Kelly's music royalties being garnished for debts and restitution, and his assets seized to pay the over $10 million in restitution collectively awarded to victims. What was once a music empire generating millions annually has been systematically dismantled to provide compensation to those he harmed. The empire he built on the backs of his victims is now being used to help those same victims rebuild their lives. Victims continue seeking restitution through civil litigation, with a February 2025 lawsuit seeking enforcement of an unpaid $10.3 million judgment. These ongoing legal battles ensure that Kelly's legal troubles will continue, even as he serves his federal sentence. The victims aren't letting up. They're making sure he pays every penny he owes them, and they're not taking no for an answer. The transformation from the king of R&B to federal inmate, #90,888, represents more than just the fall of one man. It represents a fundamental shift in how the justice system approaches powerful figures who use their status to harm others. Kelly's case has become a template for prosecuting celebrity crimes, demonstrating that wealth, fame, and cultural influence are no longer sufficient shields against justice. The streets always knew something was off about Kelly, but now the courts have officially confirmed what many in the community had been saying for years. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.